Hello everyone, welcome to a new video. This time we'll be looking at the Dark Burden banner. Ironically enough, I was supposed to get this video out yesterday, but thankfully because I actually waited a bit longer, I ended up finding out a few more things about Ike, so hopefully this makes up for the delay. And well, let's get started. Oh, actually, before we start, I will say this. The first two are really in no particular order, because depending on what your roster is, one could be better than the other. The last two, how can I put this? The best unit is very obvious, but the other three units can kind of be put in any order. I do consider the third unit to be slightly better than the first and second due to versatility. But I'm gonna be completely honest and just say that, honestly, three of these units, depending on what your needs are very just up to you which are better than the other. So the order is really not as important here, outside of the last unit. And with that said, let's start with Leon. So, Leon, he makes me sad. He's actually pretty good. But he makes me sad for a different reason. His tome is really good. It effectively just means, oh look, it's Nagi's 80% AoE damage gone. Except on top of this, he makes you lose 50% damage because, you know, you're a ranged unit. This makes him very good at dealing with ranged unit. And also, if the unit is ranged, this is one of the key things to note. The unit needs to be a ranged unit, bow, dagger, magic, staff, one of those things. Otherwise, the 50% damage reduction, the Raven Tome effect does not take effect. So say you're hitting Kangas, or say you're hitting Female Fallen Corrin. This will have no effect on it. You will not increase your damage, and she will not lose damage. So, just want to point that out because the wording can be a bit confusing. It's basically you need to have both conditions fulfilled. A bit awkward, but other than that, it works pretty well because at the end of the day, there's really only two colorless unit that matters that it does not target, which, again, Kangas, Fallen Corrin. That's kind of it. So, alright. Also, this is our second unit with No See Disrupt. It really took since Nyla to now for them to add a new unit with it. Definitely better than No Follow-Up, which is a very niche B skill, as I'm probably going to point out again in this video, because I think one of the unit has it. So, overall, Leon is... how can I put this? He has a niche as a very strong range killer. The second you're out of this niche, however, he does fall off to some extent. But his bulk is so good you can actually work with it. Now, with that in mind, I will also say that AoEs can still be dangerous to him. Not in the sense that it can kill him or get him slaughtered. The problem is his speed stat. He has a speed stat so low, and because he's not an armored unit, he cannot use Vengeful Fighter. So, as a result, the HP threshold for, you know, quick riposte is 80% HP or more. This can be a problem because it essentially means if he takes as much as 9 damage from the AoE, quick riposte is gone. And because quick riposte is gone, he might actually fail to kill the enemy unit if said enemy unit does an AoE. Thing to note about this is that if you're dealing with, say, Sonya, for example, who gets an extra 10 damage on skill proc, that AoE is always going to do 10 damage. So, as a result, Sonya might be able to survive, and because she survives, she might be able to get danced and then slaughter one of your units. It's just a situation... It's just a situation you can come across. So do be careful if you plan on using him and AoEs are around. Sonya is really one of the most annoying one, but Ophelia can also have so much attack that despite the absurd amount of res that Leon has, she can still do like 9 damage. But that's mostly at lower merges, so do keep that in mind still. It's still worth, you know, being on the lookout to avoid this. Moving to comparison, and this is why I find it sad. Yeah, I'm comparing Leon to a armored unit. I want to just say this in advance, because the stat line is very similar, and Leon is an infantry mage. He's behind by 17 BST, and it does not really feel like it. It really feels like Leon? Whatever. It really feels like he was meant to be basically replacing Nagi, because Nagi really fails at her role. In a lot of cases, if you decide to go with Soul, which, why wouldn't you? You want Sustained for Special Fighter to keep working, you will fail to kill Alm, and Alm will kill you as a result. That's a problem. Another case would be, say you're dealing with, you know, Ophelia. You might fail to get the kill as well, because, you know, that said, typically Ophelia is not that big of a problem because blue, you're green. But it can still be iffy. Their weapons are extremely similar. The only difference is that Leon gets an extra 3 attack and Nagi gets cooldown -1. Which, you know how I've been saying always how cooldown -1 is effectively just better. With Nagi, it's really hard to take advantage of. Yes, you can run Bonfire. Yes, you can run Soul. Yes, it allows you to heal yourself up easier. Yes, it allows you to one-shot easier. But if you're talking about an armored unit, you really want to have speed to combo into Special Fighter and cooldown -1. Which makes it very difficult for Nagi to do really anything. Not to mention, she has a Raven weapon. Right? But no access to No-See Disrupt. I really hate the fact that she was made an armored unit that is like focused on the meta of dealing with this particular set of unit instead of being made an infantry unit like she should have. But still, the point I'm trying to make here is the fact that Nagi and Leon are very close in terms of stats, except that Leon has a weapon that's way more consistent than what Nagi has. And that's kind of sad, personally. Do keep in mind that Leon does have a few problems that Nagi does not. Nagi can just run Vengeful Fighter instead, you know, just to be consistent with Quick Riposte. Unlike Leon. There's that, really, but that's really the main thing. What can I say? What can I say? It's kind of depressing, honestly. Infantry gets access to just so much more skills and so much more option that it makes Nagi just obsolete now. It's really sad how a Gen 4 unit does not have a niche anymore, because there's a new character now that does this niche infinitely better. And as someone that plus 10 Nagi, that's kind of disappointing. That niche did not last like even a year. So yeah. It's kind of depressing on that regard. Really wish she had been an infantry unit with at least some kind of speed. But, oh well. What's done is done. Either way, the way I use her is not going to change. It's just kind of, well, disappointing is all, really. But yeah, let's move on to his builds. There's really not much to say here. You can basically just use a combo of one or the other, really. You can use bonus doubler with No-See Disrupt if you just want to be a ranged killer. You can use close counter special spiral, so you can use, say, Soul to keep your HP up for quick riposte. Or you could just use special spiral iceberg for damage. It's all options you can do. The idea with special spiral is it takes a 3 cooldown and makes it down to 1, so you just get hit and proc. So you are locked to enemy phase, but you have a very strong enemy phase. Honestly, both of these sets work, and as I said, combination of both do work. Bonus doubler, No-See Disrupt, close counter, special spiral, both work. It's really up to you. Quick riposte is almost a must-have as the seal, You could run it as the B skill, but personally I feel like you have just much more important option in B slots that cannot be put in the seal whatsoever. But that's just me. So yeah, that's Leon. A bit niche, but he does his niche very well. Unlike Nagi, who failed at her very niche, so there's that. Moving on, let's talk about, and I'm pretty sure most people are going to be surprised when I say this, Corrin. But at the same time, most people should not be surprised because there's no surprise to be had here. As far as this kid is concerned, nothing really of note. Yes, we get attack speed solo 4. Whoop-de-doo, an extra 1 attack and speed. Who cares? Attack speed solo is extremely available as far as 3 goes, and the extra 1 attack and speed is just not worth the money. It's really only worth it if you plan on using the unit as an arena core unit for the 300 SP cost. But even then, I would just say, hey, Swiss Sparrow 3 is like several units, maybe that would work. Though this works as multi-phase, which can be definitely helpful. The problem is, a lot of the time you want to use this, you also want to have this encounter on top of it to really abuse it, which you don't have access to here. So, yeah, that's, it's not very amazing, I'll just say this. Still, if you want it, go ahead. So, I can't really talk about the weapon without comparing it to the female variation, so here we go. They basically have a very similar stat line. Honestly, it's kind of obscene. 2 less defense, 1 more res, 4 less speed, and 1 more HP, same attack, because Savage Breath gives, I think, attack plus 3, and Brutal Breath gives speed plus 3. So there you go, that's why. As far as speed goes, female Corrin has never really been in a situation where that was a problem to begin with. Keep in mind, Corrin's weapon increases her speed by 3? By 6 across the board, sorry. I'm stupid. Which, with a buff, basically puts you at 49 and you're not even merged. You don't even have any skill up at this point. It's just a weapon and a buff. So, speed never really was a problem, so the fact that male Corrin has something better, it does not really matter. And as far as attack goes, technically Corrin does have more attack, because Corrin does get 6 attack from the weapon, instead of 5 from Corrin's weapon. Now, the big thing that separates the two is also the fact that female Corrin is colorless, so there's no problem of any matchup except Nagi and Raven Tomes, which nobody uses those, and for good reasons. Even if you had a Raven Tome, dealing with Corrin is just not going to be very easy. Because there's not many Raven Tomes that just have the stat, like the speed, the bulk, to just deal with Corrin. That's just kind of how it is. So, as a result, it kind of doesn't matter that she's weak to Raven. Not to mention, Raven is just a weak-ass tome. I'm gonna be completely honest here. And also, we don't have Dragon Breaker. I don't understand why that's not a thing yet, but at the same time, dragons are so weak at this point that it's like, what's the point? What's the point, right? You can just use a Fortune and one-shot this. A 4-star plus 10 Chrome one-shots this. And yes, to some extent you can actually point the fact that, hey, this Corrin is good against Fortunes, but then there's also Julia Durdry, as well as Legendary Julia, that just does not care. So, it kinda doesn't matter too much. Not to mention, the fact that he's blue is a blessing for Fortunes, but also a hell of a curse, because there's a lot of green units that can go very quick. Nino, for example. Or hell, just run Blade Tomes, and there you go, you're one-shotted very consistently. Now, this is also a problem with female Corrin, but yes, this is even more present for this Corrin. Either way, honestly, the fact that he's blue kind of makes it more annoying for him. Yes, he gets guard with his weapon, which the female version does not have. However, even if you were to run Pulse Smoke, unless you're dealing with a unit using, say, Sturdy Impact and such skills, which locks you to one hit and therefore potentially missing them, missing the kill, I mean, you typically won't care too much about the fact that they have any special, because what ends up happening is you can just proc Pulse Smoke. And Pulse Smoke will just shut down their current special, and if, you know, Fallen Corrin here doubles, she's typically gonna kill whatever it is, and she doubles very easily. Not to mention, you can just put her in range of say Marth, and even though you lose 2 across the board, it doesn't matter. It really does not matter. Because at the end of the day, look, you lose 2 across the board, Marth's weapon gives 2 across the board. Whoop-de-doo. You can then just use Drive to then further buff, or you can do that with Corrin. This is a thing you can do with both of them, as far as I understand. Though the guard effect can be a bit iffy because it depends on how little people is supporting him. So yeah. But yeah, Corrin will do better on subsequent matchup because of, say, Sturdy Impact. Because then, even if they recharge their special through this, Corrin won't care because their special will not budge because he has guard in his weapon, unless the enemy has also Flashing Blade for some bizarre reason. Whereas the female version is going to eat a special. So it really becomes a, do you want to be more immune to special, or do you want to have, you know, color immunity removal? Well, whatever. You get what I mean. Do you want to be colorless, or do you want guard? In both cases, it's pretty valid, and, well, it really comes down to what you want. Though, at the same time, if you already have female Corrin, what male Corrin brings to the table is not really worth you going out of your way to pull him. Personally, that's the way I look at it. He is a solid unit, mind you, and also a pretty good counter to Larcy and Shannon if you struggle with them in Arena. Though, as far as high tier is concerned, finding Larcy and Shannon is kind of rare. I've run into them, like, both at the same time once, and all I had to do was using a Lucas. There are options against those. So yeah, just want to point that out. But yeah, really up to you. One does not really invalidate the other, it's just that they have one small thing that differentiate one to the other. Though, again, if you already have female Corrin, you're kind of pulling for something that's fairly similar. So unless you like the art and the character, which, let's be honest, female Corrin does not look great, but male Corrin looks really good in that art. Like, male Corrin is super fitting for what the art is supposed to be. Corrin just looks like, oh, I had Taco Bell at 3 AM and now I'm about to need the washroom. And then you have this Corrin that's like, just, I'm losing my shit. I prefer male Corrin's art, personally. But that's just me. But yeah, with that said, let's move on to builds. If you have seen what female Corrin is like, these should not really surprise you. It is extremely similar at this point. So, yeah, there's not much to say here. But, yeah. You can also switch it for Special Spiral for extra healing. So, say you go with Soul instead, right? On the left, of course. If you run Special Spiral instead of No Sea Disrupt, you can use Soul. Though you do lose matchups against staff units, so it's really a give or take. No Sea Disrupt is eventually typically will do better than what this does. But, with that said, Soul, you know, works already just fine with No Sea Disrupt. It's just that Special Spiral will be more consistent at getting you heals. So there's that. Set on the right is definitely more damage and multi-phasing. Brazen attack res, because at that point, you know, you're meant to just deal better. Go more into, like, how can I put this? You can attack, get hit, and proc because of Special Spiral, because Ignis becomes a 2 cooldown, or you can just get hit back, and then proc. It's more consistent for damage. If you one-shot, you get basically Ignis ready for the next fight, so you can just jump in with Ignis ready right away. That's also a thing. So, yeah, overall with this, he hits 75 attack, 51 speed. And then you had the weapon, so 80 attack, 56 speed. It's pretty solid as far as res is concerned in defense. As long as he's under Brazen, he's basically at 48 def and 48 res. Very hard unit to take down, but as I said before, Fallen Corrin, the female one, does very similar things, except colorless. Because their stats lines are very similar their stat lines are very similar from one to the other. So yeah, as far as the left is concerned, you're still looking at 73 attack, 56 speed. So, you know, not too bad. As well as 48 def and 48 res. This is kind of why you want to have res plus if you're going for a tank set, because then you can use mirror stance instead of, say, brazen attack res, which means you're not HP dependent. So soul is a bit more consistent as a result. But yeah, overall pretty straightforward unit. Again, if you already know what Fallen Female Corrin is like, there's not much to say. It's not like there's a new tech that this one can run that the female one can't. They are very similar, mind you. It really just comes down to Pulse Smoke is more effective with this version of Corrin than the female one. That's really it. Keep in mind, Attack Smoke is also an idea if you're not talking about AR, because AR is really the only place where instant specials are a thing. So yeah, moving on to Julia. Now, it feels really weird. It feels extremely weird because when I was reviewing the legendary Julia one, I actually pointed out how, hey look, you get 6 attack and res, but no way to have follow-ups. This is especially sad considering that was right after Duo Ephraim, who got like dual effectiveness on top of 3 attack on top of auto follow-up. And, you know, I also pointed out how auto follow-up would have made legendary Julia a lot better. Here we have auto follow-up on top of attack and res -6. Bizarre coincidence, I guess, but I'll just point out this. This is a really good weapon, but it can be a bit gimmicky. If the enemy is effective against Dragon, which, mind you, there's a lot at this point, well, the weapon is not gonna get the auto follow-up. It's a good drawback, it's a good way to balance Julia, because that way you can just have so many counters to her. Legendary Tiki is especially effective, as well as Naga. So, you know, Naga especially, just any unit you have that you can think of, you can just be like, oh, put effective against Dragon, poof, oh, can't double anymore. On the other hand, this weapon is also very good for dealing with certain specific units. Let's talk about Surtur. Let's talk about the new Edelgard. Both of these units block follow-up because you typically run Warrior Fighter on Surtur and you typically run, you know, Aimer on Edelgard. Dark Scripture will basically mean as long as you're solo, on top of them not having effective against Dragon, it's not just effective against Dragon, you have to be solo. Your enemy will lose 6 attack and res, but you will also double them. And her speed is in this comfortable position where she has enough speed to break through Wary Fighter, because basically the extra follow-up will make it a speed check. Surtur, as well as Edelgard, have no speed to speak of. So 24 speed is actually in a good numbers, just so you're able to double through Wary Fighter or through Aimer. Those are like the main 2 units. And believe you me, even if you actually, you know, are red and they're green, unmerged Julia does kind of struggle with killing them. They just have a lot of res. They just have also, especially in Edelgard's case, that makes you lose 6 attack. Since, it makes you lose attack, and you have combat triangle advantage, you're basically losing 7 to 8 attack because of the combat triangle. So yeah, that's kind of rough. Now, Light and Dark. Light and Dark is a very good skill. But the main thing I criticized it on the Legendary version was the fact that, Legendary Julia was not very able to use the speed to her advantage, which made Light and Dark fairly iffy. Now, I kind of have another problem with it. But before I start with it, I will just say this. Legendary Julia no longer really have that big of a problem with speed, so long as we get Fuckstones. Fuckstones will basically fix the speed altogether and allow her to hit 48 plus speed. And with Light and Dark, Fuckstone basically does -6 across the board on your enemy, and your enemy cannot buff. I think you can kind of see where this is going. So, well, let's move on. The problem I have with Light and Dark here is the fact that, and I know most people are going to be tired of me saying this, low skills should not have been a thing for infantry units. Because they are, let me just compare low attack res to Light and Dark, right? Low attack res basically does +3 attack, 3 def, 3 res for you. What does Light and Dark do? -2 across the board for the enemy. Okay. +3 attack, speed, def, res. +2 attack, speed, def, res. So you basically sacrifice 1 attack and 1, def, res for 2 speed. The speed here is not very important now, is it? Unless you go with a different set, but that's a different story. That's kind of depressing. And, the enemy having a speed buff is not that important either. Unless you're talking about just blocking follow-ups, which, unless you're talking about enemy phasing, is not that important either. It just makes Light and Dark look like a worse low attack res, which, to some extent, it is. Which is kind of a sad state of affair when this is a pref skill. If low skills were locked to horses, which they should have, this would not be a problem because this would be unique. This would basically make her one of the only units that's able to negate buffs on the enemy side, outside of Deirdre and base Julia herself. So you also would not have cancerous combos like low attack Def Life and Def 4 Legendary Crom. Yeah. I really, really, really wish those were not available on infantry units. That was really a bad play on IS's part, honestly. If we ever get low skills 4 at one point, I really hope these ones are going to be horse exclusive. That's the only thing I can hope at this point. But yeah, Dark Scripture, very good weapon. You can replace it. There's 2 weapons that can really be used that I actually use Light and Dark to a better extent. But yeah, let's move on. As far as comparison is concerned, there are a few units that are fairly similar to Julia in terms of stats. But really, the main takeaway when it comes down to Julia compared to all of them is that Julia can do all of their roles to some extent. Yeah, all of their roles. You can go the speedy, Fuckstone route that I showed with Kyria, with Julia, except Julia will be more consistent at it and also has Light and Dark to actually accentuate this help. So that's really good. Or you could make her an enemy phase unit who actually gets follow-up, which Kyria does not get. Which means that, unlike Kyria, which is hit once and kill, Well, Julia can basically do the same thing as Keria, but double on top of it, which can be a bit overkill at times, but other times can actually make the difference between killing or not killing. So there's that. The main thing that Keria has over Julia, however, is the fact that she can support team members, whereas Julia is basically selfish. The debuff that she inflicts is only when she's the one fighting. So there's that. And there's also the fact that she has to be solo, whereas Keria does not have any positional weaknesses. As far as E1 is concerned, very similar stats. I will actually say that E1 is a bit better overall when it comes down to having better bulk. But as far as damage is concerned, he's behind by a lot. Even if you're talking about using a Foxstone, he is behind by 4. So there's that. Though E1 can also use low attack res because his speed is not in any shape or form in a bad place. With just Foxstone and a buff in speed, he's at 47. E1 in general is just really hard to beat. He has 166 BST, which is higher than any other red mage, or really mage in general, because he's the only trainee one of Gen 4. So, you know, as a result, he's fairly solid. Julia, on the other hand, is all res, which, you know, as far as res is concerned in attack, she completely beats E1. The problem, though, is that E1, you know, has more speed and defense. That said, if you're talking about Dark Scripture, which can definitely be used here, the difference is not as big as it looks. And the biggest takeaway here is the fact that Dark Scripture actually is multi-phase. Foxstones is not. So there's that to keep in mind. Though keep in mind they can both use Foxstone. And Julia is actually pretty solid at it. But that's a story for another time, once we get to the build section. As far as Lysithea is concerned, the biggest difference here is the fact that, yes, with Lysithea, you can outdamage Julia purely because Time's Pulse will basically get you a special ready. But it's only one fight per turn because Time's Pulse is not going to just refresh itself. Unless you run Special Spiral, but the problem with Special Spiral is that she's fairly frail. And as a result, can just get killed. And, you know, even if you use Sturdy Impact to, you know, make her bulk better, the thing with Julia is that her res is so good you can go all in on defense. You can't really do that with Lysithea because her bulk is pretty even, which is a good and bad thing. So Sturdy Impact can be a bit iffy overall on her, whereas on Julia it's more like, if you run Dark Scripture, Light and Dark, as well as Sturdy Impact and Sturdy Blow, for example, while you're looking at 43 defense. This is without buffs. With buffs, that's 49 defense. And the res is not bad either, basically sitting at 58. You see what I mean? Julia can become kind of a brick wall, and yes, E1 can do that to some extent, but, you know, the difference between E1 and Julia is that Julia actually gets a pref. The pref is actually solid and allows her to go for multi-phasing. But I will also point out the fact that if the enemy is effective against Dragon, Lysithea will typically do better in terms of damage. That's kind of a given, but yeah. The 6 attack and res that the weapon removes does not care whether or not the enemy has effective against Dragon, so you can actually use that to your advantage. But yeah, Lysithea is a bit iffy though, because honestly, obviously if you're using Time's Pulse and your special is ready, or Special Spiral if you manage to survive that long, I mean, you're going to typically outdo Julia for one fight. The difference is that Julia can just be used with dancers and consecutively keep killing, whereas Lysithea can be a bit iffy on a Special Spiral, which, again, as I've mentioned before, her bulk can be iffy, especially at low merges, which is not a problem for Julia. Julia could be unmerged and still be extremely hard to take down because 30 impact, because 30 blow. Because you just end up with like 31 defense, 37 with Dark Scripture, 43 with buffs. It's nuts. And her HP is not bad either. So, at that point, the enemy needs to have like 80 attack to one-shot you. It's not gonna happen. Unless it's something like Legendary Crom, of course. Let's be honest here. But yeah, Julia is overall very solid. So, yeah, as far as builds are concerned, she's also the most versatile. Obviously, we're going to speak about, you know, the typical sets first, which is with Dark Scripture. Set on the left. Obviously, I got rid of Light and Dark here. At low attack res will typically do better, and same thing for the set on the right. I kind of kept Light and Dark here to remind me, oh yeah, that's a skill. You should probably talk about why low attack res is better. But yeah, in this case, you have enough speed to block certain follow-up, though it's not exactly consistent. But as far as the rest is concerned, here this is a more damaging set. So, with Attack Def solo, you hit 3650. With Brazen Attack Def, you hit 4350, which is easy to proc because you can just get hit, and then kill. Or let yourself get hit in one shot because look at your attack. Dark Scripture pushes your 68 to 74, Attack Def to 80, low attack res to 83. It's ridiculous. And the second your Brazen is up, you're at 90 attack. Yeah, she hits hard, but unlike Legendary Julia, she can hit twice. So, yeah, there's that. But yeah, so setting up Brazen is not as hard as it looks. Once Brazen is up, well, you're basically looking at 43 def, 50 res. The weapon pushes that to 49.56. Then low attack res pushes that to 52.59. Yeah, this is insane. And the best part about this is you basically need to be solo, but that doesn't mean you cannot be supported by range 2 allies, like say Kaden, for example. Kaden can very much use this, and you can very much combo her into, say, Legendary Edelgard. Her attack is just so high that it's super easy to work with. So, say you use Legendary Edelgard with bonus doubler, oh boy, you are in a good position for her to just wreck shit. Basically 52-59 with bonus doubler become 58 defense and 65 res. Yeah, as far as ranged enemies are concerned, they're kinda screwed. And as far as player facing anything, they're not going to have an arm at the end of this. They're just going to explode, typically. She basically hits as hard as a blade tome, with the ability to double through the weapon. So yeah, pretty insane. Though obviously blade tome will typically do better, but if you run, say, instead of Iceberg, you run a 2 cooldown. I put really Iceberg here just to like destroy, say, units that are more problematic, because it's easier to just attack, get hit, attack, have Iceberg ready for the next fight than with, say, Ruptured Sky. Still, if you have something like Ruptured Sky, you can just hit, get hit, and proc, which is very solid as well. Or if you want to have even more damage, you can just replace low attack res for Special Spiral. And with Special Spiral, you're going to be basically just looking at hit, get hit, proc. Which when you're looking at this with 50 res, that's 40 damage. 40 damage. It's obnoxious. it's just really obnoxious, especially with an auto double condition. So even if the enemy has something that basically blocks follow up, they better be quick on top of it. So yeah, pretty strong. As far as the set on the right goes, this is definitely more of a enemy phase one. Sturdy Stance and Dark Scripture, as well as Light and Dark or Low Attack Res, because that's better. I'm going to consider Low Attack Res here. You're basically looking at 43 def, which is still pretty solid. As far as res is concerned, also 59. It's a bit more iffy, but really, that's kind of just how it is. If you want to have close counter. You can, and I know most people are going to point this out, you can use close foil. And actually, for her, it works. It works because Light and Dark gets rid of the adaptability part. Which means that even if you get hit, you have 59 res to work with. So they will struggle to do damage, no matter what. Close counter is just better, though, personally, because it will actually allow you to hit them back, which will typically kill them, unless they're blue, which can be very iffy overall. Still, if you're looking at this with close foil, which again I don't suggest, but you are free to do so, you'll have 48 def, 59 res. So there you go. So you can also use Soul if you prefer to keep your HP high, because our damage is high already. You're basically looking at 81 attack with low attack res. So there's that. Panic Smoke is a good option if you want to just get rid of all of those nasty buff the enemy might have. Though, to be fair, if you use Light and Dark or low attack res, there's not really much buffs they can do that's problematic. So there's that. But you can make them penalties. So yeah. Overall, a very solid unit. You can also make her a vintage tank, but I do not suggest it personally. I feel like her bulk is solid, but there are better options out there. Legendary Leaf is a great example of a much better option. So, you know, because color can screw you over. Not to mention Levitain, to some extent, can do a better job than Julia. The main thing about Julia is the fact that Panic will not really hurt her as much as a Blade Tome. So there is that. Especially in AR, that's really important. But, again, if you feel comfortable with this, go ahead. But you typically will need several merges to make that work. Just my 2 cents. Now moving on to these. Now, these can really work at any merges, as far as I can tell. The set on the right, however, you'll typically want to replace Sturdy Blow for Swift Sparrow, or Steady Blow whenever that becomes a seal. So your speed is not too little. As for the set on the right, on the left, sorry, it's kind of a given, but this one is a bit more iffy to do at lower merges. It can work just fine, but it's a bit iffy. Because you'll typically have to get rid of Sturdy Impact and instead have something that buffs your speed. You can use, say, Speed Dev solo instead of Sturdy Impact. You lose a bit of defense, yes, but your speed will work just fine, and you can replace then with Sparrow 2 for, well, if that becomes a seal, Steady Blow or Sturdy Blow. Both of those are pretty good options. Keep in mind that flowers are also a thing and can actually soften the blow a bit. Though, actually, no, you can use this as well if you change the refine to speed with flowers. You're actually going to hit 47 speed. So there is that. So set on the left is very obvious. This is a Foxdome set. Sturdy Impact, Light and Dark. This is one of the places where Light and Dark shines because you want to have the speed, you want to have the attack, you want to have the def, you want everything basically. So, you know, Light and Dark is going to, on top of Sturdy Impact and Swift Sparrow, going to push your attack to 79 with Rather Fox. 6, 4, 2, and then 4, so 16. So 79 attack. As far as speed goes, Fox and Swift Sparrow as well as Light and Dark pushes that to 48. So 79 attack, 48 speed. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Very good at doubling at that point. I actually am running something very similar to this right now, except in my case, of course, my Julia is not +10. I was lucky enough to get 3 copies within the 40 pulls, though, which I was pretty happy. I was definitely pretty happy. But yes, I actually use something like this. I switch between the 2 weapons because Foxstone is good. The weapon is good. The base weapon, of course, I mean. It really comes down to, well, what do you need more, you know? In Arena, you prefer to have the auto follow-up. That's kind of a given. Whereas, if you're talking about outside of Arena, for like everyday stuff, having auto follow-up to get rid of Surtur and Edelgard is a lot less helpful, because Surtur does not really show up in any Tempest trial. They literally removed them because people were complaining. So, yeah. So that weapon becomes a bit less interesting to have. So Foxstone becomes a bit better because it's a bit more englobing everything, if that makes sense. So, you know, Foxstone is really solid outside of Arena, but in Arena I would definitely use the Pref over it. The Pref is still good, mind you. It's just, Dragon effectiveness is very common, and failing to double and therefore failing a kill really sucks for it. So, this is the second option. Now, as far as bulk is concerned, Foxstone, Sturdy Impact, Light and Dark, that's 16 defense. So you're looking at 46 defense. If Steady Blow ever becomes a seal, you're looking at 50 defense. So like 70, that would be 75 attack, 48 speed, with 50 defense, as well as 56 res. She is not dying easy. That is extremely bulky. Keep in mind also, as far as the Dragon Killer effect that basically blocks the follow-up, a lot of units that have Dragon Killers are units that she will one-shot. Mostly, when I'm looking at this, mostly the Falchion characters, because the Falchion characters are just not having a whole lot of res. And Nagi also typically will get one-shot because that's just Julia's thing. But yeah, just keep in mind, be wary, just in case that does happen. Foxstone is a bit more consistent overall. And you take less damage, in a way. Because you can enemy phase and not get doubled. Like, say, because right here, right, I have 40 speed. It's a bit higher than the other set. But that little bit that you have extra will actually stop certain follow-ups from happening on enemy phase, which means, you know, if you're dealing with a ranged unit, it can be helpful. As for the set on the right, this is just pure damage. You're basically looking at 47 speed. But hey, when it comes down to the attack, you go from 64, 70, 72, 76. And then you add the 24 damage from Blade Tome. 100 attack with 47 speed. Is that overkill? Probably. But it's an option you can have. Personally, I use Foxstone and I'm probably going to give Blade Tome just because I really like Julia. Besides, her voice is so soft and adorable. I love it. So, I kind of want to give her stuff just because of that. Of course, there's a bit of bias for that, but I don't really show any bias when it comes down to reviewing characters because bias has no place for reviews, but, you know, moving on. So yeah, this was Julia. Now, let's talk about the more tricky character of the banner, Ike. Oh boy, Ike, what have they done to you? Holy shit. So, Ike. Ike does not seem to be all that great at first. Like, he just looks like another fast sword unit. But then you look at the weapon, and really it's the weapon that decides everything here. Repel, Steady Breath, nobody cares. Really, no one cares. Chaos Ragnall, Now that is disgusting. So this weapon does a few things that are very unique to it. First off, I just want to point out the stupidity of IS. They are like avoiding refining DC weapons so hard right now. But then we get stuff like Altina, and now this. And if you think this weapon is not good, or not that amazing, you are going to reconsider very quickly. So, what does Chaos Ragnall do? It essentially just negates buffs, debuffs, sorry. In fact, debuffs that are hit on him becomes buffs, effectively. So say you get hit by chill attack, chill defense. Cool, you have now +7 attack and +7 defense. Because what it does is, it does +7 to counter the 7, and then another +7 to make it a buff. Yeah, it's gross. It's very gross. And that means if he gets hit by an infantry skull, like the highest one that does -8 across the board, ooh boy! Ooh boy! You are not going to like the +8 across the board he just received. I'll just say that. Another thing to note is that he's completely, immune to panic. Here's an example for those who don't believe me. So here is my Ike sitting at 54 -6 attack because of panic, as you can see with the icon at the bottom and the fact that this is a buff. So I'm at 48 attack, the enemy has 41 def, I should do 7. I do 19. It basically loops the debuff you got from panic into a buff. That's what it does. That's how nasty this weapon is. Being immune to panic is insane. There is no character that's completely immune to panic. You can have a character like Brunia, which, will be like, oh, my buffs are now debuffs? Okay, sure. Now they don't do anything for me. They just don't buff me, they don't debuff me. It's nothing. Here, it's a straight up buff. That's kind of disgusting. But, and I'm sure some of you actually know this interaction already. I did not know until yesterday because I was too busy working on other stuff. Until like an hour before I was going to record the video, and by the time I was done with like checking a few things with this, I was actually super tired and I could not really record, so great. Sorry about that, but it just kind of happened. Now. If we're talking about this, boy, oh boy, this is a screenshot made by someone who hacked the weapon in the game to test a few things. So you might be surprised to see 29 attack do 49 damage on something with 20 defense. Well, this weapon has a unique interaction with attack res bond, or really bond 4 skills. So attack res bond 4, or attack speed bond 4, but you'll realistically use more the attack res bond 1. Basically what it does is that debuffs inflicted to your attack and res are negated. Right? In combat. That means that outside of combat, which is when the check happens, okay, at start of combat, you still have the debuff. So here you can see in the screenshot there's -6 defense, -6 attack and res. What the fuck am I saying? -6 attack and -6 res, which makes it go to 40. So of course, Chaos Ragnall pushes that back up to 51. Then you get in the fight. So you get +7 attack because of, attack res bond 4. But then attack res bond 4 gets rid of the debuff altogether, so then your 58 attack goes up by another 11 because the debuff is not present anymore. Meaning your weapon is basically doing +22 attack, but you don't get any of the drawback of the penalty. So you just get 22 attack for no reason. On top of the, extra 7 attack from the weapon, from the attack res bond. So suddenly, your 40 attack in reality is 69. This is insane. It effectively makes him immune to debuff, but also gets all the benefit from his weapon. What the hell is this? So, yeah, that's pretty disgusting. And really, there's not that many things you can do with this, but this tech is so strong, it actually makes him kind of low-key broken. Because at that point, you almost want to be panicked. You gain from being panicked. Because the buff that became debuff is not a debuff anymore. Which means that, say, you know, your minus 6 attack is now plus 18. Whereas, normally, or rather, your minus 6 attack is now plus 12 attack. Whereas normally it would be plus 6. Panic is beneficial to Ike for those stats. That's disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. No matter how you look at it. This weapon is actually giving a run for its money to Altina's weapon. And Altina's weapon is no joke. Honestly. So as far as comparison goes, it's really hard to make any comparison, but these are really the main ones. And, oh boy, Lif with a slaying edge, what happened to his breath? The thing is, if you really want to abuse Deadly Balance and open the future, you need cooldown -1, and Lif's weapon does not have cooldown -1. Therefore, you kind of have to use slaying edge. Still, look at the defense and res, right? 38, 37. Yeah, that's still really good. But he actually has to run distinct counter, right? So if you run attack res bond 4 on Ike, you have more attack than him, but you still end up with 36-34, which is really good offensively. Not to mention, you are not immune to attack debuff in such a way that you get more advantage out of it. And same thing for res. Do you see where I'm going with this? Yeah. Really, the main thing that becomes dangerous for him is AoEs, but even then, it's not that dangerous. Deadly Balance also does -5 attack and defense for the enemy, so there is that. Even with attack res bond 4, you have basically tied attack with Lif. As far as def and res is concerned, Lif just outright beats you, because he ends up with 43-42. Whereas you are at 36-34. So, Lif does also have Bonfire on top of Noontime as the skill, so he heals less, but does more damage. Now, Mayhem Heifer is just basically Radiant Heifer but reskinned. It's a 4 cooldown version of Heifer, which means you can combo this into Special Spiral. Special Spiral is pretty disgusting with this. This is really the only reason why Legendary Ike was still worth something. But now this is just a better version of Legendary Ike with an actual prep that does some shit for him. So, yeah. I think you can kind of see where I'm going with this. Legendary Ike is now obsolete. Because this version costs less to +10. This version is better. This version scores better. The only thing that Legendary Ike has is the Legendary status. This is it. There's nothing else that base Legendary Ike does better, and that's why I didn't even include him here. If you compare stats 1-to-1, this new Ike just beats the Legendary Ike in every one except attack by like 1 point. Which is not going to stay that way for long because Ike has a busted-ass weapon and enough attacks to get hit by chill attack consistently. So yeah. But yeah, Lif ends up being a bit bulkier. But even though he's a bit bulkier, personally I would consider using Ike because the thing with Lif is that, first off, harder to +10 because he's on a Legendary/Mythic banner, which God forbid those banners are awful to +10 anything. And at the same time, they both do the same thing. They both heal themselves off from the enemy. The only thing is that Mayhem Heat Ether heals for more. So, yeah. And being, you know, immune to panic / debuffs is utterly disgusting. The funny part is, I getting hit by a Versa, that's a good thing. Let that sink in. You want him to get hit by a Versa, because if you have, say, attack res bond 4, you're basically transforming that -3 across the board to +6 attack, 6 res, 3 def, 3 speed. I don't know what to say. This is insanely good. As far as Larce is concerned, Larce is still better than this version of Ike as far as burst damage goes. The problem with 4 cooldown specials is that you can't really chain them whatsoever. Larce can proc Regnal Astra twice in a fight. Also gets rid of the buff on the enemy side. Also does not need Special Fighter, which means Special Spiral, sorry, which means that she can just use a Lol or Wrath. So she has more options as a result. As far as burst damage is concerned, Larce is just pretty much unbeatable, because double Regnal Astra is disgusting, especially when you have like essentially 30 damage a pop. You can kill blue armored units on death tiles with this. That's how insane it is. But as far as everything else is, Ike is better. He has better sustain. He has better stats, honestly. And his weapon is just disgusting. Because his weapon is basically anti-meta. That's the best way to really describe it. There's not much you can do about this weapon. It's just that good. So yeah. Don't know what else to say. Really, really good weapon. The weapon is basically what decides most of this, but Mayhem Ether is basically like cherry on the sundae, really. It's such a good special to combo into this weapon, because it means that he has so much sustain. And look at that speed. He's not gonna struggle to double either. The only thing that become really dangerous with this are AoEs and instant special. But it's not like you can't run Pole Smoke and just smash it in the fucking pack. And suddenly, yeah, you can just deal with most things. Yeah, it's kind of disgusting, isn't it? And the best part is he's red. So Legendary Azura will prioritize attacking him if you Pole Smoke the enemy side. Typically, Legendary Zero will attack him first, because she won't unleash a special on herself. So it comes down to who does the most damage. Ike's res is not amazing, of course. So typically Azura will be the one to attack to do damage. Which means you get rid of the Dancer as well. So yeah, another thing worth mentioning. But yeah, let's talk about builds. There's not really a whole lot of variety as far as builds are concerned with units of these banners. You can do stuff, yes, but typically other character will do what you're doing either better or similar. So you have to really focus on certain set that really take full advantage of this. Set on the left does not take advantage of the second part of the weapon, but this set basically means that shells are typically going to hit you and not enemies, which is extremely nice, because it's going to just make, you know, Ike hit even harder. Which is the idea. As long as, you know, the only stat that's a bit iffy here is attack, but as long as you don't buff a character with high attack, it should be just fine. Let me put it this way. If you get hit by chill attack, it's 59 attack. Because of joint drive attack, because of mirror stance. Well, that's 67, right? And then the chill attack pushes that to 74 attack. Yeah. That's pretty nasty. The idea here is to do as much damage as you can on your first hit every fight, because your first hit is always going to be proccing Mayhem Aether, because you're going to get hit, and then you're gonna proc it. Obviously, this is with Legendary Brave Lucina supporting you. And honestly, at that point, I might actually push her up to S+ tier, because this is another new key unit, which, ironically enough, that's another Ike. We've went full circle now. But yeah, this is pretty nasty. You're looking at 48 def, 46 res. Getting hit by a shrine is very easy as well, because you're basically looking at 90 bulk overall. Getting hit by a def res shrine is very easy, but the thing is, if you get hit by a def res shrine, say -5, you're basically looking at 53 defense and 51 res now. It only makes him stronger, which is insane. And again, Panic, completely immune to it. Although it's gonna make getting hit by shrines harder, which means you might still not want to get hit by Panic with this set. Now the set on the right, however, this is... oh god, this is disgusting. So this set here, this is the set that will completely ignore debuffs. And actually will enjoy getting hit by Panic to some extent. Actually, no, to all extent. This here, with Attack Res Bond 4 and Attack Def Bond 3, basically hits 47, 43. Not bad, not bad. The attack is basically at 77, which, okay, that's really good. But yeah, if you get hit by, say, Panic, which is very easy in AR, you're basically looking at, well... oh, I lost 6 attack, or really, have I? It basically means you're going to just get an extra 6 attack, which means 83 attack. 83 attack plus an instant Aether is disgusting. You're basically going to heal yourself up every fight, which is really good. And your res, that's another reason you want Attack Def Bond instead, for the sealed and Attack Res Bond. It's just because you're going to hit 49 res as a result if you get hit by Panic. So 47, 49. Pretty obvious, right? Yeah. That's pretty disgusting, isn't it? That's really the main strength of Ike, though. Really taking advantage of this weapon is the main thing. Honestly, it almost feels like a glitch. Because, this is... I wouldn't say it's very okay, but at this point, the IS was so slow to respawn. We're kind of stuck with this now. So, yeah. This is what we're going to have to deal with from now on. Thankfully, dealing with Ike is not that bad. Outside of AR defense, which... it's AR, dude. You're going to lose. You're going to lose. What can I say? AR is not exactly meant to have fun. It's meant to be annoying, honestly. So, it is what it is. But dealing with Ike is not as bad. And yes, you can use Repel. Personally, I don't think it's good because Special Spiral will just allow you to proc Mayhem Aether every fight, which is just better overall, in my opinion. So yeah, really good unit. Countering him is very easy. It comes down to just having a high defense blue unit, really. And, you know, not debuffing him. So chill skills are out of the window, which, thank God, because people are still thinking chills are amazing, but they're really only good as seals now. And even there now that's kind of a problem for you to run. So, but yes, as far as the free 5-star pick, it's definitely going to be Ike. I personally picked Julia because I just really like Julia, and Ike I don't really like. Honestly, if that had been Grail, I would have maybe be tempted, but the way it is, yeah, what do you want me to do? But yeah. In conclusion, this banner is quite good. Just like the start of it all, it really just introduced nothing but good units. And while I see this as a streak, I just cannot help but think it won't last. The next banner is probably going to be Radiant Dawn, if I were to guess, because Jill is long overdue, as well as Shinon. But I guess we'll see once we get to this. As far as the next video is concerned, it should be the refined tier list update. I don't know if I'm going to do Fallen Ashnard as a separate video. Maybe I will. Maybe it will end up like last time, where I end up just be almost done with the video, but then the new character comes out the day after. We'll see. We'll see. All I can say is that basically, regardless of what you pick, it's good. So if you really want, you know, to pick a character in particular because you like him, go ahead. There's nothing wrong with that. So yeah. With that said, I think I've covered just about everything. Though, I actually kind of forgot about Leon that could actually run Mystic Boost. Oh well. I completely forgot. For those who are here, Mystic Boost is an option on Leon to actually make so quick riposte is more consistent. But yeah, that's about really all I had to say about this. I guess I'm also going to pin this as a comment for the video. But yeah. I think I've said my piece for this. Hopefully this was enlightening to some, and well, I'll be seeing you all next video. Have a nice one, everyone. See ya.